It's a very special day in this chaotic world at the moment. And Hillary and myself, we both run Coherence Hotspot, and we work closely together also with Rollin McCraty, but we will introduce him in a minute. We are so happy that you're here because this is a perfect timing, actually. This is a perfect timing. And I want to welcome everyone from all around the world just to participate. This is just the beginning, and we'll get more into this. But I also want to be mindful of Rollin's time, because Rollin has just a bit of time and then he has to leave again. And mind you, it's his Sunday like for everybody else, but Rollin is working around the clock. So we have to be a little mindful of that. Hillary, maybe you want to introduce.
Well, yes. I see familiar faces and I see new faces and I see faces I haven't seen in quite a while. So thank you all for being here. We're so lucky to be able to invite and welcome and introduce Rollin. Rollin McCraty is the Director of Research from the HeartMath Institute. And he is a supporter of ours, and our I'm one of his top fans, I think. Big fan. He is such a cool guy with so much information and so much science, but he's accessible, and that's huge in these times, is having somebody that's got all of this wisdom that actually takes the time and is accessible. So I just like to welcome you, Rollin. I don't see you on the gallery view. Where are you?
I'm right here.
There you are. There he is.
Next to you on my view. So.
There he is. So today, what's really important for what we feel is really important, there's so many different initiatives and things that Rollin is a part of. And today we would really like to focus on personal coherence and what people can do in this time for themselves to start out with. And so if I could just hand it over to you, Rollin, if you could maybe explain in your words what coherence is, what personal coherence is, and how we can actually, how it affects us and how we can actually become coherent.
Wow. In 2 sentences or less, huh?
No.
Well, coherence, of course, is kind of a big word that means a lot of different things. And when we use that term in the sciences and physics and so on, it has to do with describing the degree of harmonious order and connectivity and cooperation among the parts of a complex system. Like us as human beings, we're very complex, super complex systems, actually. So coherence implies that all the parts have to be talking to each other in some way to be energetically coordinated and working together in a harmonious way. And kind of relative to these times, going back many years, what our work has shown is that when we're feeling fear or anxiety or overwhelm, these types of feelings, that actually throws our system into incoherence. In other words, the parts don't work very well together, and especially the brain and the way the heart and brain communicate. So we can, when we get into these fear responses or anxiety, over anxiety, we don't think clearly, and we allow a lot of the emotional drama to take over, which further drains our energy because parts aren't working together, which kind of creates a downward spiral. And that's one of the worst things we want to be doing these days, because we know, even some of our early studies back in the 90s showed that when we are in those incoherent states, that actually infects our hormonal system and our immune system, and actually just getting frustrated, for example, for a few minutes downregulates our first line of immunity significantly for up to 6 hours just from a few minutes. In fact, we just put out from HeartMath last week what we call care focuses, what we want to have to help people, what we call the understanding the difference between intelligent concern and fear. So these times, yes, we need to be concerned, but intelligently, because I think the fear virus can actually do more harm to us than even the virus itself in some cases, if that makes sense.
Yeah, can you explain that? Because how is coherence or incoherence related to our, for example, immune system?
Well, that's what I was just stating. If we're in a state of over fear, right, that actually creates biochemistry in our body that suppresses our first line of immunity.
Yeah.
And just a few minutes of that has a downstream effect that lasts up to 6 hours, at least in our studies, up to 6 hours in our first main line of defense in our immune system. So that's one way.
Yeah.
So it's so important to understand that the lasting effects of this. And so when we talk about becoming coherent and coming out of that place of fear, how long does it actually take, Rollin? I mean, Dirk and I are working with people all the time, but in your words, how long does it take to actually, once you know the actual steps, the heart math steps to become coherent, how long does it take, like a minute, 5 minutes, before you can actually settle the system down and interrupt that cascade of stress hormones in your studies?
With practice, I mean, you're not going to just learn a technique and boom, shift all of your physiology into coherence the first time. But with some practice and really learning what that state feels like and how to make that shift, you can actually shift from incoherence to coherence within a heartbeat. It can be that fast. Doing some of the deeper heart meditations and things to really settle the system down, in my experience, it takes probably 5 minutes or so to really get into the deeper states of what we really mean by energetic coherence. We're really getting our system settled down and connecting with the deeper aspects of the heart and heart's intelligence, which then brings in our own inner guidance, our own best friend of how to actually navigate, how to make better choices these times, how to make, in certain situations, we just have to make peace with what is, right? I mean, why be stressed and anxious about certain things that we're just having to do, right? Because we know that's just going to deplete our system. So in some cases, it's just really, truly making peace with what is.
Yes, that's perfect. And I love that you say, to get a little deeper at about 5 minutes. And people might be really astounded at that, about 5 minutes. Who doesn't have a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, especially right now in these moments, to actually think twice, like, okay, this is where I'm at. And now this scientist here, the head of research, is telling me in 5 minutes I can change. Within a heartbeat, I can change. And this is the really important thing that we want everyone to take away from today, is that you can do something to your system that is so supportive. And it's a simple technique, but what I learned very early on is it does take practice. It sounds simple. There's simple steps, but what Rollin says about, it takes time to practice this and get into this. What's an amazing personal, maybe research that you've done over the years that stands out the most for you? Is there something that really stands out watching, like the physiology of one specific person, or in the past that was really amazing, watching someone grow their HRV or anything like that?
Oh, that's always a tough question here for me. There's so many things. I think some of the work we're doing now on the social and global side of things is kind of more where my passions are. And there's been a number of, probably a handful of things that if I look back over the last 25, 30 years of the research, of the surprises, and they're always the best ones. I've kind of learned that, if we're designing a study and, we're proper, you have your hypothesis and so on, and you're intended, the questions you're asking, but it's usually the surprises that are the most fulfilling and fun. In other words, if you said, if my study came out with this, right, I've learned not to do that, because what actually happens sometimes is far, far better and fun and leads to whole new research paths, and had it come out the way I thought it should have or would have, right? Probably not making a lot of sense right now.
No, it makes total sense. So when you're doing these studies, like back in the day, I know moving forward, you're focusing more on the social and the global aspect, which we will talk about in future calls a little more in depth. But when you're measuring and seeing somebody get into coherence, that word again, the device that you've created is the inner balance. And if, I don't know, do you want to speak to that a little bit and how that came about?
Well, God, how did that come about? That kind of sort of invented the field of heart rate variability feedback, biofeedback. And that came about by, well, first in the lab here, seeing that when people are really having heartfelt feelings of things like appreciation, gratitude, kindness, compassion, and so on, that the heart rhythm shifts into a dramatically different pattern, which reflects inner coherence among the body's inner systems and synchronization and so on. And then this is going back a lot of years, and then we had these devices, right, that you could buy, medical devices. You know, they're pretty big, and basically our trainers had a suitcase that they would run around with, just carrying this equipment to hook people up in trainings. And it was such a big deal for people to actually see. You know, you pick somebody from the audience and wire them up to all this stuff with electrodes and so on, and then project it, and people could actually make these shifts very, you know, by learning these techniques. And it was such a an eye-opening thing for people to realize that they had this kind of power over their physiology. But that was kind of clunky, right? Dragging suitcases around, and you know, there's such a need for a personal device. How can we do this at home? How can we do this inexpensively, not having to spend $5,000 for a suitcase full of equipment? So that led to the first consumer device to allow people to see it and measure their HRV in real time. And it's gone through a bunch of different names. And so the Inner Balance sensor goes with the Inner Balance app, but we're gonna have to change the name to the heart math pulse sensor, because there's more apps now, like the Global Coherence app, which to me is even cooler because it looks at the groups and the community's coherence together. In fact, yesterday, some of you here might have even been on it. We had the first Global Coherence Pulse, as it's being called, which is really cool to me, because it's the first time in in 30 years of working in a nonprofit. Just to back up a little bit here, we've had over the years, I can't tell you how many meetings and conversations with different heads of other nonprofits. I won't mention names, but a lot that you'd recognize. If we got our missions are so aligned, and we really ought to collaborate and work together, and it all sounds great, but when the rubber meets the road, it always falls apart, and it's never really happened. You know, whose mailing list and all this kind of crap, you know, usually came into play then, and the deeper levels of, you know, competition or self-security always overrode the good intentions. But for the first time, I think, that I've been around, many organizations are now coming together and actually truly moving past that and saying, okay, we're going to work together. And that's really kind of been, I think, spurred by or motivated by the Global Coherence app, because all the organizations want to be able to measure who are our people that are here together now, and where are they in the world, and how coherent are they? And that's what the app does. So that's led to kind of a spontaneous collaboration, which is becoming more official now, around, instead of everybody trying to have their own groups and all this stuff, we'll all keep our own identities and our own networks, but all kind of promote each other, so we can bring all of our people together to really pulse the earth globally with coherent heart intentions, to really help offset the planetary stress and fear waves that are obviously going on now. So yesterday was the first one. I know Hillary, you and Dirk were part of that, and we kind of maxed out the 500 people, and we had over 350 people on the app, and a very high coherence level for that many people. It was really amazing, and I think that'll grow into many thousands as we pulse the year's field with our heart intentions. I'm rambling now, so.
No, it's perfect what you say, all that you share. I love all of it. And it kind of just leads into sort of the final for closing for you is, you spoke to it already. You speak about how everyone is collaborating now, and now is the time. And we appreciate that from you so much. And especially for those of you who don't understand what a coherence hotspot is, we will explain that a little further later, but we really appreciate your support, Rollin. Like it really means a lot to us. And moving forward, we really look forward to all the things that we'll be creating in the future. And If there's one little reason why you said yes to us, what would it be? Like, why do you support what we're doing?
Well, when we first envisioned and created the Global Coherence Initiative, 12 years ago, I guess now, or something like that. I'm horrible with past times, but somewhere in that time frame. From the very beginning, it was my hope and desire that the project would not only inspire people who really understand that our energetic radiations matter and really do affect the world in measurable ways. So GCI is not about trying to convince people. Well, in some ways it is, because we're measuring that, but bringing large numbers of people together to really create the energetic environment that helps those on the cusp wake up, and that creates a feed-forward loop that really is critical to shifting global consciousness and elevating consciousness. I just know that. But at the same time, we've got to be down here on Earth actually working with people and helping them understand the heart and the brain and heart tools and so on. So both are important, but GCI is more focused on the energetic side. Again, I'm being long-winded here, but back then, even then, my desire was to encourage and facilitate local groups to really create what you call hotspots, and local groups to help spread the word and help create local centers for people to come together to learn about coherence, but more importantly, yes, learn about it, but also be coherent. You're well aware, one of the things I always tend to say is, hey, be more responsible, more aware of and responsible for what you're feeding the field.
Yes.
Our personal field, because it affects us in profound ways, but also what we're feeling inside, the emotions we really feel, whether we're cognitively aware of it or not, matter. And they don't just stay inside of us, or not just contained within us. They literally radiate externally, which we can measure in very real and very scientific ways now. It's not just some hippie saying, if you will, that it matters. And certainly in the local environment, what's even more kind of fascinating is that also more and more research is showing it happens globally. What we're feeding the field not only affects our families and our loved ones and the people around us in our near field environment, but it actually matters globally. And some of the new research is showing that people's hearts are not only in sync with Earth, or can be, and get out of sync when we're overstressed. And we really want to be in sync, by the way. There's a lot of benefits to that. But what's really blowing me away is new work showing that when people really have a close emotional relationship, they don't necessarily have to be husbands and wives, but just that heart bond, that their heart rhythms can literally synchronize even non-locally when they're actually attuned to each other and sending love to each other. So this really is happening globally. And so what we feed the field really does matter.
Beautiful. And then just one last thing, can you just explain to people in a basic way how you actually are measuring that, the magnetometers, and how many there are?
Well, there's multiple ways. Yes, we do have within the Global Coherence Initiative currently 6 magnetometers that are designed to measure the resonant frequencies, basically the rhythms, the changing fields in the Earth's magnetic fields globally. It's the only system like that exists, and that's where we've actually shown now and proven that our hearts do literally synchronize with the rhythms in the Earth and each other because of that, and through resonance principles that we share information with the Earth's fields. That's one way. We're also involved in 2 other projects that are part of global coherence research. One, hopefully we'll have some slowdowns now because of everything being shut down, but definitely this year, a global network for people to measure trees, the electrical potential of their trees. So trees themselves actually have very large and rich and dynamic electrical potentials. So that gives us another living system, right? Trees are great research subjects. They don't walk away, they don't run off, and they don't mind if we put a couple of electrodes in them. And so having a global network, so what I'm suggesting here is all living systems are interconnected via the Earth, these fields of the Earth that we can measure with the magnetometers. So we measure people, measure trees, and then we're also we'll be taking over the Global Consciousness Project. Some of you might know what that is. Roger Nelson has chosen us. He said, this has got to go on, and wants us to, and we've agreed to he's retired, so we'll be taking that over and creating a 2.0 version of that, which is another global network that has a profound 20-year history. I mean, it's amazing what Dr. Nelson has pulled off in showing that our consciousness does matter and affects the physical world in very measurable ways. In fact, the statistics on that over the 20 years now, that our radiations, if I can call that, or what we feed the field really does matter. And statistics are now like P to the minus 47th, which means 1 trillion to 1, that this isn't, not just some random chance thing. In fact, it's equivalent and even surpassing the statistics in quantum physics. So this is a very real thing. So it's these are multiple ways that we can measure what we as humans do, what we feed the field. It really does have measurable effects in the physical world. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's perfect. I love it because it shows us that it actually does start right here, but that it doesn't stop there, and that what we're doing when we're taking care and we're being responsible, intelligent concern and responsible and taking care of ourselves, then it absolutely is affecting each one of those points that you just spoke to.
Yeah, so I think overcoming our own fears, and who's not going to have them from time to time, right? But the more we can really self-regulate those and actually radiate, love and heartfelt emotions into the field, it really can help offset some of that.
Yes.
And create our own immunity. So, and hey, if we end up, we're not immune here at HeartMath. I mean, we're playing all the games, right? The social distancing, we're on lockdown as well. But if somebody here gets it, we get it. We'll deal with it. I mean, right? So if we have a lot of fear about it, you just suffer twice.
That's right.
That's one way of thinking of it. So, but of course, we're going to be intelligent and have intelligent concern.
Yes. Thank you, Rollin. Is there any last comment or thing you want to share with the group here, with everybody out there in the world that will be listening?
I think I've said enough. I mean, it would just be repeating. Please pause throughout the day and ask yourself, what am I feeding the field? And if you find that it's a little bit, on the incoherent side, use one of the techniques that I'm sure you'll be sharing. I see some other HeartMath trainers on the call here.
Yeah.
Well, that can add some techniques to how to start being more responsible and choosing our emotional diet, feeding the field.
Yeah. And most likely the HeartMath trainers that you see on the call are also hotspotters, which is really cool because they kind of make it now on a regular basis where they share. That's what we do. Yeah.
And I haven't, just one last thing I'll say for some of the trainers that I see here on the call is what Awake TV hosted our event through their live streaming, the Global Coherence Pulse yesterday, and they've agreed to create a HeartMath channel. I've got to work out some details, so hopefully I'll be inviting some of you as trainers to, hi Lori, to actually, maybe volunteer to take on different topics that we can communicate via Awake TV to the masses on how to navigate these challenging times.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Rollin.
Thank you for all your ongoing support. We so appreciate you, and we'll continue then without you. Will you probably go and talk to the trees right now?
Something like that.
Thank you so much, Rollin.
All right, take care, everyone.
Always good to see you.
Likewise. Love to everyone.
Thank you.
Well, so it's really good to have Rollin on board and hear his perspective. And I can't help think always when I hear the words, of the care and the compassion and the radiating and everything. And then I look at the world around me and I think, what a lot of people understand it. For some reason, when reality seems to kick in, everything goes overboard and we forget it. And we go back to our old self. And this is what Hillary and I, of course, work with often a very, very challenged group in their lives with trauma and PTSD, where they want to change, but their bodies actually often resist the change because people initially don't like change. And to give you an example, I was not so long ago, I was in the ski resort here, not so far from here, and a friend of mine has a store there. And a lot of the owners actually didn't like it that the ski resort was closing down. And they said, yeah, maybe it's a little overreacting and maybe we should just continue. Because when our business is at stake, you know, with our personal interest is at stake, then suddenly we don't want it. So it seems is that we need to always be enforced. And now the world is basically what dramatically calls on lockdown. We start literally reinventing ourselves. And we actually thought when we put this on now this morning, it couldn't be a better time. It couldn't be a better time to basically start sharing some of the tools of coherence, explaining to the people who are not heart math trainers, who are not so familiar with what coherence exactly is like, to share that. Because it's extremely important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the whole purpose of this webinar Zoom call was actually planned before any of this actually arrived on our doorsteps, so to speak. We had decided to actually explain what coherence is and how it affects our systems and how we can be in charge of that, how we can empower ourselves to actually make a change. And so we want it to be very educational for you. We want it to be valuable. And again, we realize that we've maxed out with our numbers today. So for those of you who will be listening to this recording, there will be more. We understand that this is a time that people are really interested in learning what they can do. And so that's what today's all about. Having Rollin's support means so much to us because he's just, like I said, he's so down to earth, but he has so much knowledge. And so we can do a bite-sized piece today about, you know, coherence and how it changes our physiology. But then it really, as he explains, it goes way beyond that. Like what we do to our system and what we ripple out goes so far beyond that. So he did explain what coherence is. It's when all of the systems, doesn't matter what living system, is entrained, is organized, is running efficiently, and that the fact that there's tools to measure it. He was talking about them having like that big suitcase to walk around with, which is pretty hilarious because now we're down to an app on a phone and a device that clips on your ear. And some of these are Bluetooth, some of them are not Bluetooth. They've changed over the last, 5 years since I started as a trainer, but they're accessible to everyone. They're not something that you have to have in order to practice this. And that's really important to know. It's just really cool to be able to see your system and what's happening in your system when it does change, to actually see your heart rate variability changing. So that's another term that we speak about a lot when we talk about coherence, is our coherence. We look at that through our heart rate variability. And it doesn't have anything to do with necessarily our heart rate. It's the variability and the pattern in which our heart actually beats.
Yeah, it's actually the beat that sets the tone for the quality inside of our physiology. And maybe just to briefly go back, we had a talk with Rollin not so long ago, and he says, yeah, why don't you actually call it, the heart coherence hotspot? And we said, well, there is actually a lot to coherence. Yes, the heart in the human being is the main generator, the strongest generator of an electromagnetic field in the body. And everything is about electromagnetics around the planet and in our bodies. But when Rollin was explaining about the trees, for example, nature in itself, untouched by humans, is coherent, which means there is a natural resonance that is in perfect alignment. It is this beautiful quality of an intelligence of basically of the creator in whatever it is that you believe, who created this beautiful universe. And so I often say when we work with people, I said, if you want to create coherence, it is actually the only thing that you really need to do is to get out of your own way. Don't try to interfere. Don't try to try hard to become coherent. Don't try hard to breathe or to switch a certain emotion. The more we are getting out of our own way, and that's often the hardest to do, the more our system naturally falls into a coherent pattern and a resonant pattern. And so HeartMath has been studying this for so long, and they said, well, humans are not always getting out of their own way, let alone most of the time they aren't, because we have many thoughts on a day, and especially the thinking that leads us onto paths that are often not very helpful for us. And we know, studies show we have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts a day, which basically means is that every second that is now, and it is now, and it is now, you have a thought. And then you might think, no, I don't have thoughts because I'm listening to you. Well, 90% of the thoughts that you have are running below the surface. They're subconscious. And this is where the difference also comes in between meditation, for example, and creating coherence. Because it's not very clear. We had at one of our hotspots, we asked, they said, how, are you coherent? And one lady says, yeah, I'm always coherent. And I said, how do you know? And then she says, well, I meditate. I said, that's beautiful. I said, but how do you know that you're coherent? Because she said, well, because I meditate. I said, but how do you know? And of course, she got a little annoyed. And then Hillary had to jump in for me, I believe. But the thing is, you can sit and you can meditate. And it is beautiful. I meditate every single day. But how do you know that you don't have thoughts running in the background that are not supporting you? How do you know? Yeah. You don't, because they're below the surface. So the only way is to check in with your body and use some of the biofeedback technology that says, your awareness is not around the heart, it is more in the head, and your coherence drops. Right?
Yeah, and often with meditation, you can get coherent if it's a heart-focused meditation, one that's actually focused on entraining your heart and your systems. Oftentimes with meditation, where some people astral travel, some people leave their body, and they're visualizing other things. And there's beautiful meditations out there, and they're all perfect. They're all fantastic if your body gets a break from them. The difference between meditation and doing the HeartMath specific breathing, the 10-second cycle, is that your focus is actually inside on your heart. Your focus is in your body, in your heart. So you're not focused on a beach somewhere, you're not focused on colors, you're not focused on music or someone speaking, you're actually focused on your own heart. And then you're bringing your awareness of your breath into that. Now, when you first start doing something like this, it might feel really awkward, and that 5 seconds in, which is the recommended and studied and peer-reviewed cycle, and the 5 seconds out, oftentimes when we're working with people, especially when people are in like anxiety, stress, PTSD, trauma, whatever it is, it's really hard to like make it 5 seconds. And so we don't all start there. That's like where we want to get to. Sometimes we start with 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. We just want to make sure that we're being aware, that we're focusing on the area of our heart, and we're bringing that breath in the equal amount of time as we're letting it out. And that's where we start. We're all somewhere different. That's the whole purpose of this Zoom, this webinar, is to speak to every single one of you that's out there. We all start where we are. We're not all going to be coming at it from the same place. And so the practicing of that, it's amazing when we're working with people, how many times we hear, why didn't somebody teach me how to breathe? Why didn't somebody teach me how to do this? It's unbelievable to see the shift in people's just there. You can not only feel it from them, you can see it on the monitor. We can see it, but the shift in state is profound for really the amount of time that they spend doing it once they practice. And then they come back and tell us, oh, I was at the grocery store. Oh, I was driving. I didn't have road rage. Oh, I just walked past this guy in the street and smiled at him. Usually I walk with my head down. So it's having that awareness. It brings an awareness into your own body. And Rollin spoke to that clarity. When you can come in and you can slow yourself down for even 5 minutes, he's saying, 5 minutes, we can have intelligent concern instead of the fear and the anxiety. Doesn't mean we're not going to have fear and we're not going to have anxiety, but if we understand and we practice and we know the steps to get into coherence, we're just giving our body an actual physiological break from all of those stress hormones that cascade through our systems when we're living there. And another thing Rollin shared was when we even have it for a couple of minutes, the stress response or frustration, I think he said, that stays in our systems for up to 6 hours. So we have all of these things collected and compounded over and over, all these things that happen to us during the day, and especially again right now. And how do we give our body a break? How do we break the loop? And so we, at some point, we're going to practice this on the call, because I think it's really important. This is like our first one for the public. We felt even a few weeks ago that it was really important to explain it. My mom is 87, and she always says that she has to think of incoherence or incoherent before she can come up with the word coherence, because it's just a word that doesn't roll off her tongue, and she knows what it is. I mean, I'm her daughter and she gets it, but it's just funny that like so many people are like, what is coherence? You know, what actually does it mean? And it's that entrainment, it's that lining up. A lot of times we call it when we're in flow. So another little point I'd like to make is oftentimes we say, oh, we want to become coherent. We're going to practice heart math because we want to feel joy, or we want to be happy, or we want to feel gratitude. And that's beautiful. That's an amazing place to get to. But for a lot of us, we're not starting there. For a lot of us, we just get to neutral. Maybe we can just come into neutral. Maybe we can come out of panic, be aware of it, and just get to neutral. And that is huge. Where you start is the most important part, and just having the awareness that that is how you're feeling. So if you can just, become aware of your breath, focusing on your heart, slowing your breath down, little bits at a time, just that alone is setting the tone for your systems to be able. The heart sends more messages to the brain than the brain does to the heart. And that's science. And that's mind-blowing for me, because at 50, 60, 70, 80,000 thoughts a day, wherever you read, whoever's reporting it, it's a lot. It's a lot. And 90% of the ones you had yesterday, and that subconscious you're having today, and you're probably going to have tomorrow. So how can we break that loop of even the unconscious ones? Well, we can go straight into the body. We can go straight into our own physiology.
Yeah, and what Rollin also mentioned, and what it's so hard for the human mind even to conceptualize, because we are linear beings, we think in a linear way, where he says our consciousness, so that means our awareness, affects the stuff out there, affects the field. And then you think, this sounds so out there for so many people. You say, what do you mean, affect the field? But literally, consciousness these days is part of physics. It means is that if you change the way you feel and you create coherence, and what he says, you basically align yourself with the same field around the planet, which is natural from the planet. There's a lot of research being done, and we can't go really deep into that, but maybe in the next call. Then you start automatically changing the matter that looks like matter, but is actually also energy. And so we shape the world as we start focusing on the things that we want to materialize. This is why, for example, the film and the book of the Secret, was so popular. It's a bit of a simplified version, but when you bring your awareness to something, let's say, to create compassion for one another, and you ripple that out, you align with the field, then it literally, people start automatically shifting into that field. And this is why the Global Coherence Initiative does such an important work, because we are now at a time where things don't really seem to work for us, because we cannot connect. We have to, what we call social distancing. Well, I would say this is social connection. So thank you so much for showing up, because this is not social distancing. This is thanks to everything that's going on. People have more time and they connect in a way that is really meaningful. And when we practice, when we feel, even the people out there on the street that we sometimes feel really anxious about, or we don't want to get too close to, but we connect with them, from our hearts, and just ripple that out, the care that we have for each other. Even looking at each other, in the faces and say, yeah, we want to make a change inside of ourselves, but it also affects the field. So maybe it's actually cool for now, and then we get a little bit more into how does it affect the field, and then for a next version for our webinar for next week, we actually want to announce, we want to get more into how actually are we socially affecting each other. But maybe we want to get into a coherent state right now and just to give it a practice. Yeah. You don't actually have to close your eyes. This is something that we always say. It naturally happens, and it's okay. When you shut yourself off, you close yourself off from the world. I actually don't mind looking in the eyes of other people who are coherent, because it's beautiful to look each other in the eyes and to look in people's eyes who are looking coherent. It is very calm. So if you slowly start start bringing it awareness to how you breathe. Maybe you have been holding your breath a little bit. Maybe your chest was barely rising and falling, because that's what we often do when we are a little tense. We kind of hold our breath. But if you start breathing in a little deeper than you would normally do, and a little slower, and you don't hold your breath, then you let it go again, and then you take a next breath really slow. I know that the HeartMath Institute advises us about 5 in and 5 out, but just if you go about slow and deeper than normal, you breathe, and maybe you imagine now that you have a heart with 2 lungs in it. And when you breathe, you feel the air flow through those 2 lungs in your heart. Feel the air coming in and then leaving your body. This is such a magic in itself. And when we bring more awareness to our heart, what we do is when we feel the air flow through it, our hearts start actually beating differently, in a different pattern. Because guess what? When we feel the air flow, we're getting out of our own way. And it feels very freeing because we don't have to do anything for it. Just to feel the air flow. And maybe you can feel a certain ease when you do that. Just keep feeling that air flow through it. And when you feel some ease around your heart while breathing, maybe you even can feel an emotion such as gratitude, just for being able to connect, to be able to know this tool and to breathe this way, to support your system. There is a batch of hormones, which we call DHEA, which is increased by 100% in our body after a few minutes of this breathing. Just keep breathing this way. And this is the growth hormone, the hormone that starts building health in our cells, strengthen our immune system. So we are very intelligent beings. Just keep feeling that gratitude around your heart while breathing. This is when we create coherence. This is when our hearts connect with a larger heart. I like to call it the heart of all hearts, our cosmic heart. This is what Rollin was speaking about, the larger field that we align with. The Schumann resonance. And how can you not be at your best when you align with the intelligence of the earth? This is how we communicate literally with the earth itself, because we align with her field. And maybe for the last couple of seconds or so, maybe you can open your eyes and maybe you see some other people on the screen in front of you. You know what it looks like to look in the eyes of a coherent person. We don't have to do anything for that. For many of us, we know that we often have been told that we're not good enough or we are not enough. But by breathing, how can you go wrong? You tap into the deepest intelligence, and no matter what other people tell you or have been telling you, you matter, of course, because you are a piece of this creation. It's very freeing. It comes very natural, but it's just a matter of applying it. Anything to add to this?
Because we're starting out with YouTube and Vimeo, we have several videos that we've taken over the past 9 months or so. What does coherence mean to you? And so we've shared those on our channel. There's a pretty short one that actually speaks to coherence. It's called the Inner Balance Experience. And that's just a very brief, these are all very short videos, but you're just getting other people's take on what coherence means to them. And it's the reason we started doing this is because we are where the rubber meets the road, which is what Rollin spoke to. We are wanting this information to be accessible to absolutely everybody. And so when you get more people's perspective, you have more people that you can maybe like relate to. The whole reason that we have the coherence hotspot locations across the globe is so that people could reach out and teach this to the people in their community. And with the changes that are happening right now, we've realized in our last community Zoom call with all of our hotspotters that that's changing for them too. So they're having to go, online like we're doing today. So we're all really learning at a bit of a fever pitch how to stay connected, but how important it actually is to be able to come together. And if it's 2 minutes, if it's 5 minutes at the end of a call where you dedicate that, whatever that call is, whoever you're connecting with, to actually being aware of your breath, then this will help. This will help. This is a new way. We're in frontiering a new pathway to the masses. And it's really a time where many people are obviously at home. We have more time, and we have time to either be on social media and the news and buy in, or we have time to learn. If we're curious enough, if we want to learn something new, specifically if you want to learn what's actually happening in your system and how you can change it. We wrote a program with not any of what's happening in mind, only based on the work that we do. We understand what it takes for somebody, and just learning self-regulation is a beautiful tool, but understanding a little beyond that about our thoughts, about epigenetics, even quantum physics. We get into our worldview, our perception based on where we're living in the world right now. And I know there's people all over the world on this call. So the program that we've just created is really, it might be a really cool time to actually take a look. Go to coherencehotspot.com and you can see an overview of what's in that. If you're excited about it and you're curious, then maybe you actually do the training. We've done beta testing on it, and it's been a beautiful response. So if there are things that you're questioning, if there's more information that you'd like to know about all of the things that Rollin was sharing, about what Dirk and I have spoken about today, it's really an in-depth program, but in bite-sized pieces that's really accessible to everyone. We're going to continue to, add videos to our channels, to create these Zoom communities and these calls for people for support. And we're looking at how to not max out. We'll maybe, even if we're maxing out with these calls, we'll have one and then have another one right after. So one at 11, one at 12. Maybe that even helps people across the globe because of the time differences. But yeah, we really encourage you to go to the website and just look and see what kind of support you can find just from all the free stuff that we have there listed, and videos, and yeah, and if you have any other ideas around creating your own Zoom coherence hotspot as well, like maybe you sit here and think, yeah, there's a bunch of people that I'd really like to connect with, and we could practice our breath together. We could practice coherence, and just going for it. If you want help with that, then let us know, because this is how we change. This is how we change.
Yeah, and I think it's really important this point that to realize it's beautiful to create coherence. Some of you might say, well, I like that and I like to feel good, but what about my future? Maybe I don't have a job for the next while. I don't even might have not enough financial support. Well, doesn't mean that those two cannot go hand in hand. And we will also, in future episodes, we would like to explain to you how you can make this part of your, not just your social life, but it's also financially, it can be actually working for you this way, because that is really, really important. Also, if you are interested to start a Zoom, a hotspot, which means is that at this point it will be online only, but later in the year, probably, we can go out and get into the community, because this is basically what Coherence Hotspot is about. We are creating coherent communities around the planet. And that is extremely important. Rollin was mentioning yesterday the Global Coherence Pulse, which we are an official partner of, will be featured, basically around the world on a very regular basis. And once you become a coherence hotspot with us, you carry the branding, you carry the label, and people start recognizing this with the logo. And this is why it's so important, because what we want to do, our mission is to bring it down, like I like to say, to street level, where people say, tell me about coherence. I've been hearing this before, and you look amazing, and you seem so relaxed. What is going on? People become curious, and we bring it really down to street level. It's not enough to sit with a few people around here and, who are interested in this. We need to ripple it out into all of our communities around the planet. Because as Rollin says, that makes the biggest difference. And we affect, therefore, the consciousness on this planet. And when we affect the consciousness of this on the planet, we start making different choices. We start responding differently to one another. Even politicians, believe it or not, it is possible. So, and then we see a change. And we are smart enough, in this era that we live, with the field changing as well, is that we can make a huge difference. And the biggest pitfall for us is to go up into our heads and say, yeah, it sounds nice, Dirk and Hillary, but we've seen humans are bad. We're fighting wars all over, and we don't really believe in that. That is your mind taking you back to something that once was. The field is ready for huge change. This is not something esoteric. This is hardcore empirical science. And when we embrace that, and when we can ripple that out, and the beauty is, never be afraid that you don't make an impact. Because guess what? The field is not linear like your mind is, and my mind is, and Hillary's mind is. The field works in a different way. And one day we asked Rollin last summer, I said, Rollin, have you done research around how many people would it take who are fully high coherent that it would tip the global field? That was, our question. And he smiled and he said, yeah, we've been doing some research. I don't put it out there officially, but my guess is around 350,000 people. And my jaw literally dropped and I thought, 350,000 people for the field to change? This is a time where we live right now that we can be part of this change. And so I just cannot be not just grateful, but also really proud of you that you come here. We will be sending out an email to all of you with the links so you don't have to remember them. I would also encourage you to, if you do not already so, to follow us on Facebook, at coherencehotspot.com or Vimeo or Instagram, at least that you stay aware. But also we would like to see your impact. We would like to see your input, and we support you in any way that we can. And Hillary mentioned it earlier. We have this program. It's called Mind Your Worldview. It's a beautiful program. We'll send you a link. We're really curious about this, what you think of it. Any last thoughts before we are finalizing this first webinar?
I think there's a lot of information. Even today, we wanted to keep it really, really simple and down to earth, even though that we know we're affecting everything. And that is just to remember that you can help yourself, and it doesn't need to be an appointment. So you don't have to keep an appointment with a doctor, or maybe you do, but specialists. All of these appointments that we look outside of ourselves for massage, for all these things that we go for relaxation, that inside of us with our breath and the awareness and just coming into our heart for 5 minutes, we're going to reset our nervous system, literally, and have the clarity to maybe make some better decisions moving forward. And that's a daily, day-to-day, hour-to-hour practice, especially at the beginning. And we really support you in that, in learning how to create new habits and how to implement that into your daily life.
On that note, 80 to 90% of the primary care doctor visits is related to stress. Just give it one more thought. 80 to 90% of the primary care doctor visits is related to stress. So you can do so much, what Hillary said, about your own well-being. And it's not selfish, as we know, because we affect other people around us. That's it. Thank you so much for being here. It's 12 p.m. here, Pacific Standard Time in Canada. Thank you so much for joining from all around the world. And especially thank you to also the hotspotters that are out here as part of us. We're so grateful to have you in our team. And this is not about us. This is about you guys. And we just help facilitate change. And just give a shout out to us, because we're here for you. And we are all in this together. And I'd like to finish again with this beautiful saying from Ram Dass, who passed last year, who always said, we all walk each other home. That's it. You're not alone. So thank you, all of you.
Stay tuned for our next Sunday time and start.
Next week, by the way. We'll get it out there. Thank you.